Welcome to today's brand origin deep dive. You've heard of the product, but do you know how feverish ambition, impossible deadlines, and a seemingly simple photograph reshape desktop computing forever? This isn't just a story about software. It's about the human hustle behind an icon. If you find value in this kind of storytelling, consider liking the video and subscribing. It helps more than you know. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's dive in and discover how it all began. You venture into a forgotten wing of a sprawling corporate campus. Dust motes dancing in the stale air, like tiny, confused holograms. This isn't the gleaming tech paradise you might imagine. It's quieter, filled with the ghosts of intense work sessions. Here, the origin story of Windows XP begins not with a polished keynote or triumphant launch, but with a feverish, almost desperate ambition echoing down empty hallways. You uncover early design documents, scribbled notes hinting at truly impossible deadlines, the kind that make you wince just looking at them. This pressure cooker environment was the crucible where major decisions were forged, including the genesis of the iconic Bliss wallpaper. It wasn't just a pretty picture. It was conceived as a potent symbol of utopian calm, a visual anchor meant to mask the chaotic development cycle churning beneath its surface. It's like curating a perfect social media feed while your apartment is a disaster zone. Brand historians still debate whether projecting such a stark visual stability while the technical foundation was still being frantically shored up was a stroke of strategic genius or a gamble with user trust. You sense the immense internal pressure to deliver a rock-solid platform where stability none truly existed yet. This early phase introduces the core players, the architects sketching grand visions, the visionaries pushing boundaries, and the engineers working under immense pressure to make the impossible happen. Tucked away on an old, forgotten hard drive, you even find an early, discarded concept for the startup sound. Hauntingly simple, a stark contrast to the chime that would later become inescapable, foreshadowing its eventual global omnipresence. This era was defined by this duality, the serene image versus the underlying, frantic reality. But building on what came before, the world was ready. When Windows XP arrives, it's not just a product launch, it's a seismic event. Suddenly, you feel the pulse of a world connecting like never before, adopting this seemingly perfect operating system at an unprecedented pace. This is the major historical milestone, the moment XP becomes the dominant digital environment for millions, perhaps even billions around the globe. Yet that initial triumph, bathed in the serene glow of the Bliss wallpaper, quickly begins to reveal deep fissures. Plunging into the immediate aftermath, you witness a cascade of security vulnerabilities appearing with alarming frequency. It's like finding structural cracks in a brand new building right after the grand opening. The infamous blue screen of death, far from being a rare anomaly, becomes a chilling, all-too-common counterpoint to that idyllic hillside imagery. While the external success narrative played out, an internal crisis was brewing. You uncover internal memos, a quirky, lesser-known detail, detailing increasingly urgent security patches and bug fixes. These weren't minor tweaks. They reveal a frantic scramble, an internal panic masked by the polished exterior. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind prioritizing market speed over fundamental stability in the core code. The emotional shift within the development teams is palpable, from corporate euphoria at the launch numbers to a quiet, growing dread as they grapple with patching an inherently fragile foundation. This sheer scale of the security challenge hints at something fundamentally unstable baked into XP's core code from the start, a hidden flaw that, perhaps, could never be truly eradicated. Building on the widespread adoption and critical role it established in the previous phase, Windows XP didn't just gracefully retire when its successors arrived. Instead, the machine refused to rest. Years pass, Windows versions like Vista, 7, and 8 debut and fade. Yet you start noticing XP everywhere, especially in places you wouldn't expect. The friendly neighborhood ATM, the complex machinery on factory floors, the back-end systems in government offices. Its persistence isn't driven by nostalgic users enjoying the iconic Bliss wallpaper anymore. This is about economic inertia, compatibility nightmares where vital software only runs on XP, and the sheer, unavoidable weight of legacy. This phase marks an emotional shift. Microsoft isn't just patching a product, they're managing a global technological burden. You hear accounts from engineers grappling with supporting systems they barely understand, reliant on layers of complex, sometimes unstable code from over a decade prior. The Bliss field now feels ironic, representing fields of digital decay and neglected responsibility rather than serene simplicity. A major turning point arrives on April 8, 2014, the official end-of-support date. Yet XP persists as a quirky detail highlighting the scale of this problem. Some governments and corporations paid Microsoft millions for custom support contracts just to keep these critical, vulnerable systems running, a testament to the cost of ripping them out. Analysts continue to question the long-term wisdom of deferring these upgrades, effectively kicking the can down the digital road. The longer XP remains embedded in these critical roles, the higher the stakes of its inevitable failure or compromise become. Building on what came before, where corporate control felt paramount, you now witness a seismic shift. As official support dried up, a vast, unregulated world bloomed in the digital shadows, the echo of Windows XP in the abyss. This wasn't just software anymore. For many, it was a tool of rebellion, a necessity in regions where licenses were unattainable, or simply a familiar friend they refused to let go of. You uncover forgotten corners of the internet, defunct forums where users shared unofficial service packs, archived crack sites that promised activation, and communities passionately debating the merits of custom mods. This was an underground ecosystem thriving outside the corporate gaze. Here, the familiar Bliss motif, once a symbol of calm, becomes corrupted, overlaid with malware signatures and digital graffiti. A stark visual reminder of vulnerability. A fascinating, if chilling, artifact from this era is a leaked internal memo from a security executive in the late 2000s. It starkly outlined the insurmountable challenge. How do you track, secure, or even count a fractured global user base existing entirely off the grid? It's a testament to the loss of corporate control, a moment where the sheer scale of the problem became terrifyingly clear. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind certain decisions leading to this situation, and the long-term impact of this uncontrolled proliferation. This volatile digital environment, born from necessity and defiance, would inevitably create unforeseen consequences for global security, a storm gathering on the horizon. Building on what came before, you now witness Microsoft facing a monumental task, engineering the controlled demolition of its own success. This is the ritual of sunsetting, the difficult, public process of officially ending support for Windows XP. It's less like turning off a light and more like trying to decommission a deeply embedded power grid, met with resistance, confusion, and increasingly dire warnings. Microsoft launches marketing campaigns, sometimes bordering on pleading, urging users to migrate, highlighting the shiny, supported future. Simultaneously, security experts sound deafening alarms, painting vivid pictures of looming threats, and the operating system transforming into a digital zombie, perpetually vulnerable. Analysts continue to question the reasoning behind not providing a clearer, more accessible upgrade path for all users. You see pockets of users left behind, perhaps in small businesses clinging to legacy software, or individuals simply unwilling or unable to afford new hardware. An identity crisis emerges. Is XP a beloved, reliable classic, or a dangerous ticking liability? The emotional intensity ratchets up as the deadline approaches. There's a palpable sense of technological dread and vulnerability for those remaining on the platform. You might imagine the original team members, perhaps long gone from Microsoft, watching this planned obsolescence, feeling a complex mix of pride in what they built and regret for the difficulty of its end. The death of XP isn't a final end, but a transformation into a historical relic, yes, but primarily, for many, a persistent security risk and a powerful cultural symbol of technological transition. Building on the complex impact explored previously, you now stand in the quiet digital space where Windows XP largely exists today. It lives in virtual machines, humming away in server rooms, in the fading memory of its billions of users, and undeniably, in the lingering vulnerabilities its prolonged life inadvertently left behind. This final section isn't a triumphant conclusion, but a reflection on XP's deeply complex legacy. It was, in many ways, a monumental success story, yet simultaneously a profound failure in terms of security and long-term support strategy. The promise of Bliss, the serene feel depicted on its iconic default wallpaper, was often broken by malware and system crashes. Analysts still question whether Microsoft could have managed the transition away from XP more effectively, or if the sheer inertia of its user base made a clean break impossible. Despite its flaws, XP undeniably shaped a generation's fundamental interaction with computers. Its cultural footprint is immense. The unmistakable startup sound still triggers waves of nostalgia for millions. And that simple, seemingly perfect field was seen by billions, becoming perhaps the most viewed photograph in history. That recurring motif of Bliss is now viewed through a lens of irony and melancholy. The perfect, untouched landscape hides a history of intense struggle, constant compromise against threats, and the silent, lingering digital ghosts of countless exploited systems. You wonder about the famous photo itself, a quirky, almost accidental choice of a real, untouched landscape in Sonoma, California, captured by a former National Geographic photographer, Charlie O'Rear, long before XP even launched. It's a reminder that even symbols of digital perfection can have humble, analog beginnings. The story of Windows XP doesn't conclude with neat resolution, but with persistent ambiguity. Did Windows XP ever truly die? Or does it simply exist now in a different spectral form? A silent, persistent hum beneath the surface of the digital world, waiting, a reminder that sometimes what seems like a clean end is just a transformation. As we slow down and reflect on this journey from a simple idea to a global phenomenon, the key takeaways resonate. Windows XP taught us about the sheer power of ubiquity, how a brand can become so dominant it resists change. It highlighted the critical importance of security in a connected world, a lesson sometimes learned only after widespread impact. But its long-term legacy isn't solely in the technical details or the security patches. It's in the way it became a common touchstone, a shared experience across continents and cultures during a pivotal moment when the internet was becoming truly mainstream. The Bliss symbolism, though often viewed ironically today, still represents that initial promise of simplicity and accessibility that resonated deeply with millions taking their first steps online. The lessons from XP's reign continue to inform how operating systems are designed, supported, and eventually retired. It stands as a complex case study in brand management, managing technical debt, and understanding the human element of technology adoption. Its story reminds us that even the most dominant forces are temporary, and their impact echoes long after they are officially gone. It lives on not just in legacy hardware, but in the collective memory of a generation. And maybe, just maybe, the soul of a brand is never in its product, but in the people, stories, and stumbles that shape it.